Hi, this is Greg Andruck, and welcome to the Business Freedom Conversation live stream. Little housekeeping here. So this session today, it's going to last approximately a half hour, is going to go over business structure. And a little, like I said, some housekeeping. This video will be available both on LinkedIn and on my YouTube channel, Greg Andruck Business Freedom Conversation. So if you just enter that into the search at YouTube, you'll get there. That's where I have all the posts, all the live streams, all the newsletter stuff. It's all there. We're going to break this one down into the sections too to make it easier to find once I get it over there to YouTube. So like I said, this conversation today is about structure. And starting this out, this is an issue that most people really don't think about. They kind of put their business together, and unless you actually sit down and map it out, you will probably have issues in certain areas. And I see a lot of things where people complain that they think or know they're making money, but the cash doesn't match. Well, that's why we're having this about structure. There's a lot of things you can do in your business. It's even possible to use the timing gap, and you could be a break-even operation, yet you get to take money out because of how you do the structure and the timing of all this. So that being said, let's start with, I've got some slides, and we're going to walk down the subject matter here today of the things that you can do to make sure your business has the optimal structure where it's meeting your objectives. And of course, the main objective always is that you get to put money in your pocket and pay your taxes and support your family. So see business structure. Here you see the little flow chart. That's kind of what it is. And it requires a certain amount of abstract thinking and then, of course, metrics. Now, a lot of small business owners don't have the sensitivity or the time for metrics, but let me tell you, you really live or die by the numbers. And since 85% of small businesses fail by the 5th year, that means 1 in 5 of you out there is within the next year going to close the business. This is a big part of it. This is what the pros do. We're going to get into this further, but I've done this at every place I've ever worked. I get there, I map things out. I try to make how the business flows as optimal as possible. So what are the elements of this? So the first thing is that workflow equals success. How your transactions flow and how you plug into that with the various things that supports that is how you become successful. The next thing is, and this one's the one we're going to get into it that's a little harder to do than it is to say, but is totally achievable, is when you buy and when you pay is critical. In other words, when you are financially obligated and when you're going to receive revenue, the idea is to have revenue precede the expense and that you are in control of what you're doing and your cash flow. This is one of those things that you have to map out and you have to know. And another thing, this isn't really so much metrics as, if you don't want to do it yourself, get a clerk to do it. There's so many, you get a VA to do it. There's so many options now where there's no excuse for you not to have the metrics and not to know what is happening in your business. And more importantly, to have this cash flow where you know when things are due and what is coming in so that you can take corrective action before you get to the point of a default or not having money to pay your vendors, employees, your taxes, yourself, whatever. This one of mapping when you buy and when you pay and having a cash flow schedule that you look at pretty much on a daily basis and summarize it weekly and monthly where you know where you are. The third one is to center expenses around customer and client payment. Now, if you sell a tangible good, you want to make sure that you're not obligated for that tangible good until you shipped it off the customer and that you can match terms with how your client pays you so that you know that you're positive. If you provide a service, there's other things that you can do, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. The next thing is that this is easier said than done. So these are the sections we're going to talk about, that workflow equals success, when you buy and when you pay, how you center your expenses around customer client payment, and it's easier said than done, but it's doable. And here's the key thing that makes it doable. It's really all about interpersonal skills. We're going to spend some time on this so you know what you need to make the things happen when you need them to happen. It's just not let the chips fall where they may. You have a lot of leverage in a lot of situations that you're probably not using. And by doing these steps, you're going to figure out what that is and where it is, and then start to use it. But it's not as easy as it said than it is done. So here we are where workflow equals success. And workflow tends, particularly for small businesses, you start out as a startup, you're going, things just kind of happen, right? Look at all this stuff all over the place. In the middle, below that workflow to success is methods, and you've got launch it, research, sketch, planning, does that make it? All these things fit together, and they kind of happen organically, but that's the difference between a straight entrepreneurial company and one that turns the corner. In other words, one that is here to stay, that is professionally run, that you then can map this out and control these elements and move them to where it's not chaos from when you were a startup, but it's a professionally run company by somebody that knows the pieces that fit together. So the most important thing in this segment is to know, what do you sell? Virtually every place I ever look at, they really don't know what they're selling. They think they know what they're selling, but it's sort of like golf, you know. Yeah, the successes are the ones you remember, and the failures are the ones you forget. You need metrics for this, and you need to look at that metrics pretty much daily, and then have it summarized weekly and monthly, depending upon what your sales cycle is, and totally know what it is that you're selling. It is absolutely mystifying to me that people say, "Oh yeah, we sell this product the most," and when I run the numbers, I find out something else is the number one item. So first off, again, we're getting back to metrics, and if you don't want to do it, get somebody to do it for you. That investment will pay back multiples of knowing where you are and what you're doing. This is another one that most people really don't know the true cost mix on their products. I had a client who made stainless steel elbows for caustic processes. They're used by people who make chemicals, refineries, that kind of thing. They got a deal to have, let's say their elbow was made at $1.30, and that was their total costed in that they were making them here in the US. And they got it costed out to do it for $1.10 in Asia. And when they got to the end of the year, they had a huge loss. And when I went over everything with them, we found out, well, here's the problem. Your $1.30 was made up of 80 cents of direct costs and 50 cents of your overhead allocation. In other words, your warehouse, your office, the whole thing that makes the company a company. And that 50 cents was that allocation of overhead. And by buying it direct from Asia and not cutting back the overhead, they actually were adding 30 cents cost to the thing, because with direct cost, they made it for 80, Asia 110, 30 cents a unit added cost. It was a real eye opener to them. Know what your cost mix is, and this counts for services as well. Know where you're really spending the money. What are the components? Because that helps you be in control of whatever the cost mix is. Okay, this one is really, really critical. How much does the marketing cost, and what's the timing? I was brought into a company that was selling nutraceuticals, the industry that I'm in, and they were having all these products made, buying them, warehousing them, then starting the marketing, and they were wondering why their cash flow was out of whack, and they had all these great sales numbers, but no money. And this is one that your cost of acquisition of a customer, how much is it, and what's the timing of it? Because that's the starting point of when you want to start being obligated for expenses, is when you have the satisfaction. When do you incur your cost of satisfaction? So you got to match the marketing with when the thing is the customers and the customer is obligated for it. This will save you so much heartache matching those things up. And you say, how do I do that? We're going to get into that a little bit later. What is the process of how you move your vendors in line with you? And then the critical thing is, what terms do you give your customers? In other words, what do your customers get, and how are they paying you? And everything has to kind of be centered around how you get cash out of the customer. Now, we're going to get into, what the costs are and how you get obligated for that. But matching these things up, you see how critical this is, where you have to know what you're doing, got to know what the cost mix is, so at the end of the day, you really have money in your pocket. How does the marketing cost, and what is its timing? And it's that timing you're trying to line up when you release it and when you get it. And what are the terms you give your customer, because that's what you're going to live or die by. And there's certain techniques that the terms don't necessarily have to come from your customer. See, I deal with Walmart, Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS, Kroger, all those people, and a large number of them use a internal factoring arrangement. It's unsecured, and it's just something that keeps them honest and shows you how to pay, but it generates the money a lot earlier. And my best customer on that is McLean. We ship, and 10 days later we get money on average. For McLean is a distributor for 7-Eleven. So this is a big one, vendor management, and it's best if it's done going into the relationship, where you're starting the relationship with your vendors. And the critical part about vendor relationship is making them understand the basket of gold you bring them. You're the one who has the business that incurs these costs, that they're giving you either the supporting services or the products, and they need to know that. So how do we get into that? What are your vendor terms? Just like what are the terms we give a customer, what terms do you give your vendors? Now, back on the customer terms one, at one point in time, and we're going to get into this, we had Walmart come to us and they wanted to pay us at 105 days. I currently have Walgreens paying at 80 days plus travel time. It's usually called receipt of goods. So what are your vendor terms? Because it's critical based on what terms your customers can eke out of you. You see the connection? What's your business cycle? In other words, what is it, weekly? Is it monthly? Is it daily? What is the cycle that your business goes through? Food and grocery, or grocery and drug, is weekly. Everything's done weekly. You get your orders, you ship your orders, they pay, everything done on a weekly cycle. What's the cycle for your business? It's really important to know that and know whether you can adjust to that. This is another one that's really important, and it's particularly how you deal with your vendors, particularly if you have tangible products, is what's the lead time to your products and services? How long does it take? Do you see how this starts to fit into those other items we previously mentioned? And how long does it take that vendor to get it to you so that you can then ship? And all this has to be lined up. This is one that's huge for food and drug, and both for internet, particularly if you sell a tangible product. Services, I guess, is just canceling the subscription. But on tangible products, my customers, like Walgreens and CVS, can average as much as 40%. And it's not really a return. The returns are insignificant. They get promotional allowances. They get all kinds of deductions. Those need to be managed. But a lot of online businesses that deal with tangible products, you're going to have an issue with a high return level. And I just recently saw articles in the Wall Street Journal that companies are tightening up on the returns policy, because you'll get people buy 2-3 things, decide the one they want, send the rest back. It's kind of a nightmare. You need to know and manage that and watch that carefully. And then seasonality. Get plugged into what the seasonality is and all those timing issues, lead time for delivery, shipping time, et cetera, to your customers, your service delivery of who's doing it, where your staff is. It all matters as to what is the timing and what is the seasonality. It has a big impact on what you do. Those are the elements of when you buy and when you pay. What are your vendor terms? What is your business cycle? Product service lead time? Are deduction returns significant? And what is the seasonality? You see how this can fit into a cash flow schedule so you know what you're doing and when things are going to happen? The next element is center expenses around customer and client payment. See the little red envelope? I think that's a Chinese kind of thing, maybe Japanese as well, where somebody moves money with the little red envelopes. So what are your vendor terms? It starts from there. And the thing that one has to remember is you're bringing the business to the vendor. And if the vendor supplies people to you and services, or if they supply tangible products, it's much easier to negotiate this on the front end of a relationship than it is when you're already going. The people that are spearheading this are Walmart and Procter & Gamble. 7-8 years ago, Procter & Gamble tried to get everybody on a third cycle. Procter & Gamble mostly fits into the grocery and drug, and that's a weekly shipping and ordering. That's a monthly settlement of the account. And Procter & Gamble went to all their vendors and said, we want to pay you at 90 days. As I previously mentioned, I had Walmart come to me about 5 or 6 years ago that they wanted to pay us at 105 days. That took 3 months of arm wrestling. We eventually wound up at 45 days. But what are those terms? When can you pay them? And you have a lot of leverage. Try to get 2 or 3 payment cycles. Procter & Gamble's been trying for years to get 3. I understand that not everybody's on that. It just depends on how important you are to them. And that matters to also for who your vendor is, that how important you are to them will give you that leverage, whether you can get up to 2 or 3 cycles. You're in bad shape if your customer pays you at 60 days. That means you have to ship them or settle with them twice or give them 2 months worth of product before you get paid once. You need to try and structure this the other way around, where you're not obligated until the delivery date and maybe have 60-day terms where you get paid by your customer twice or at a minimum once before you have to pay the underlying vendor. We're talking about, by matching up these timings, something called just-in-time principles. This has been around a long time. And it really isn't that difficult to do. You're looking at how things happen, what's the timing, and then going to the parties that are involved external to your company and having it done where that shipping and obligation on both ends. In other words, your customer's obligated and you're obligated to the underlying service or goods provider at that magical moment when you hand it off, the satisfaction of the order. And that's just in time, where the timing's just clean, quick. For those of you who have tangible goods, and this isn't always possible, but you'd be amazed on the things that you think are not possible to do this, that if you work at it and have a serious enough discussion with your suppliers, that they can hold your inventory till that critical minute, pretty much where you get the product only 1 to 3 days before you ship it out, and you've minimized that obligation period where you don't have it like the people I was telling you about. These people are doing 90 million a year, and they were having an inventory made, bought, and warehoused before they even started their marketing campaign. And they wondered why they had no cash. They were so far on the backward side of things, they couldn't generate any cash for their own distributions. So if you get your manufacturers to hold the inventory and the clock starts ticking when they give it to you, and when they give it to you, it goes right out. One of the things that a lot of people are doing today, because we really live in a gig economy, is you can have fulfillment houses. And the fulfillment houses can really make this work for you, that you use just in time. You don't really hold any inventory. They do. It goes out, out, out. Those of you that are on Amazon, this is another thing that you can plan pretty well with Amazon. Now, for those of you who provide a service, you can do something with a PEM, or professional employee management company. It can solve a lot of headaches related to all the new laws, taxes, whatever. But a PEM only exists to make the margin on the employees. So you can get a PEM that handles your providers. Let's say you're a pest control company and people go out there and visit clients. Well, they can be members of the PEM, and you tell the PEM, if you want to make the margin on these employees, I need you to take money at 60 days. So that means the customers will be paying you like you usually way ahead, 60 days ahead of when you have to pay the PEM. That's why PEMs are becoming so popular. So there you have it for center expenses around customer client payment. What are your vendor terms? Try to get 2 or 3 payment cycles on your end before you have to pay your vendor. Use just-in-time principles. No reason to have things sit around. Get manufacturers to hold your inventory and consider a PEM for employees. So here we are into it's easier said than done. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I know. It's a lot of talk, and it's easier said than done. But wait a minute. We're not talking about just financial terms. There was a lot of things in there that don't necessarily totally relate to finance. It's how your vendors and suppliers deal with you, the quality of what they do, the timeliness, whether whether you have sendbacks and all that kind of thing, returns. It's all critical, and it's much easier to do when you're doing it up front. Now, this is one I find almost nobody does, and I don't understand this. Don't get cozy with your suppliers. Be cozy, be friendly, but make sure that on a minimum of an annual basis, you do a vendor review, that you have their competitors come in and pitch you for the business, and you need to make sure that they know it, because it will keep them on their toes, that they don't take your business for granted. I mean, this is critical because you're bringing them all this, you're the one doing the hard work. You're doing the marketing, you're getting the demand for the product, and whoever your suppliers are, both service-wise and tangible goods-wise, needs to know that you're the critical one in this process, and you're going to review what they're doing, price, quality, everything, at least annually, and make sure that they know you're talking to other people, that that you love them, you want to stay with them, but they need to keep on their toes and keep you happy. Quality and speed are just as important as the financial term. In fact, sometimes it's better to pay a slightly higher price because of how expensive the headaches can be. Massive, important consideration. Quality and speed in this environment, and for you to have money that you can put in your pocket, are very important. Margin talks between customers and vendors. So you may be able to move your customers or your vendors in certain ways by shaving some margin points off. It also is important to remember, in this inflationary time we live in, you need to be looking at your prices and testing where you can go with the prices. The big boys have been raising prices. Pepsi, Walmart, all of these people that are having huge profits reported. Remember, the Standard & Poor's 500 last quarter, 88% of them exceeded their profit forecast. And that's because they manage margins really well. They get people to do things for them, to honor the business, to make sure they get the business, and either a vendor shaving off points for you and delivering it sooner, or delivering it on the time you want, or you're getting a customer to do something for 2 or 3 points that you can pass on in your pricing, to get your stuff done on a timely basis, where at the end of the day, the cash matches the profits or exceeds it. Here's one that I find is woefully inadequate. Make sure your people are trained. It's really important that your people know what they're supposed to do, and that you review their proficiency at the tasks you assign them. Remember, the number one reason people quit is ambiguity. They don't know what they're supposed to do, and the boss just tells them, hey, go do it. And that's why, remember the stats on your current employees. 50% of your employees are quiet quitting, and 17.5% of them are what they call actively disengaged and really want to hurt you. Well, when you start training people, it shows that you care and you're paying attention, and it has a huge impact on morale and attitude. So make sure that whatever your people need, it's updated. It's not a one and done thing. People need to be refreshed to their job description and to what skills they need, and to make sure that there's a training that makes sure that everybody is achieving those minimum levels of performance, and hopefully looking to exceed it, because they now know what to do. So there you have your easier said than done items. It's just not financial terms. Do regular vendor reviews, Quality and speed are just as important. Margin talks between customers and vendors, and make sure your people are trained. Now we come to the really, really important one. Interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills are critical for you to be able to achieve your structure. To be able to move people to do the things you need them to do all comes from the interpersonal skills that you have. So here's one that is totally underutilized. Use a skills talent assessment. I use the strengths profile. You need to have yourself measured and you need your key employees measured, and at least annually. We're going to get into this as the frequency. You wouldn't buy a car and never change its oil or even check the oil. Having a skills talent assessment and doing it at the annual review, you should do a skills talent assessment on everybody you hire. Think of the money it costs you when somebody doesn't have the correct level of skills. The strengths profile, the one that I use, will show you whether the person is suited to the job you're looking to hire them for. You should always do one of these as the final step to giving the person the job offer. They'll be impressed with it, and it will solve a huge number of headaches for you because it's critical to know that the person has the skill. What if you hire a sales manager and it comes out that he doesn't have the ability to sell? That's, by the way, in sales managers, it's odd, but it's the number one problem that exists. Now, it also identifies things. We know where I said in the previous section, train your employees, make sure they have training at least annually. A skills talent assessment will point out where your people in their various job descriptions are falling short on the skills and talent they need to fulfill the job. Doesn't mean you get rid of them. It means you help them by giving them the training they need. Trust me, it'll move them from that quiet quitting to an engaged employee when you start doing that. Okay, create a game plan. And by creating a game plan, I mean, know what you're doing with the people that work for you and what tasks you're fulfilling and what tasks they're fulfilling. If you do a strengths profile skills talent assessment, you're probably going to find out there's certain tasks you should not be doing. You're wasting your time if you try to master the things that you're really weak at. Get somebody else to do them. But create a game plan on how you're going to use people and what functions are tackled when and by who. And when you have a skills talent assessment, you're going to know who to put in those functions, who to take over certain tasks and have it be done successfully. It's a page out of the book for professional sports teams. This one is too. Practice, practice, practice. For your salespeople, your production people, everybody. Don't get into the rut where you think people know their job and that's it forever. You need to look at them and pay attention, do some training, and then have them practice what they do where it's obvious to everybody they have the skills and they've mastered them. And, things change. Things change in your business. And with how fast the world is moving, to assess all your job descriptions, who's doing what, and whether they have the horsepower to do it is key to having a successful organization. And part of that is practice, practice, practice. Just like the previous section, invest in education. Look at what's going on with AI. Everybody's, crashing things to get at AI because it's changed. AI is the fastest adopted technology ever. And this is an education that you can probably look at what is going on in your business and improve it dramatically by doing some education. Think about this. 2/3 of your employees are barely working. They're either quiet quitting or actively disengaged. Look at the profit potential to you if you can get rid of some of them and have other people be more effective, or at least move the quiet quitting ones into engaged employees. Think of the impact on your business if instead of having only 1/3 of your employees engaged, 50% of them were. Your efficiency and probably your profitability would jump. Do performance reviews on a timely basis and include these elements. One of the things I find is people get sloppy and they kind of do them when they want to do them. again, that's an ambiguity for your employees, and it can cause the morale to sink. A skills talent assessment, well, has the great potential to identify your actively disengaged employees, your quiet quitters. You just simply paying attention to them with an assessment, with a review, with education will either allow you to get rid of them or to move them up or move them into the category where they're efficient and they're going to be effective on your business. So there you have it. The interpersonal skills you need for this is to use a skills talent assessment at the time of hiring, and at least at a minimum when their annual assessment comes up, create a game plan, practice, 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 invest in education. That will help you know what you have to practice, practice, practice on, and do your performance reviews timely, because when you don't, the people wander. So there you have it. There's all the pieces of what to do with your business to make it profitable and have the cash flow match or exceed the numbers you put on the bottom line. And this will be on my YouTube channel, Greg Andrews Business Freedom Conversation. It'll be up on LinkedIn where you can get it. I hope this was very helpful to you. Send me a request if you want any data on how to get a strengths profile assessment. Just let me know and I will send one out to you. I've got a free one, so if you want to try it and see what it's like first before you do, they're also not particularly expensive. The full one that they call the professional is only $299. Think of how that cost compares to the salary you're paying something that might not be a good fit for the job. Anyhow, thank you. This is the Business Freedom Conversation live stream. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.